All right, perfect. Well, thank you guys for inviting me here. I'm going to talk about, like Mike said, I'm going to talk about PS Wordle. It's a PowerShell variant of the, I guess if anyone's familiar with it, it's a word puzzle game. Um, Likewise, like Mike was saying earlier, he approached me, and I'm always very nervous to share my code and everyone watching it. So hopefully it'll go okay. All right, let me get back on the
We'll be
screen.
gentle.
All right, thank you. That's all I ask. A little bit about me. I'm a two-time Microsoft MVP 2020, 2021, hopefully getting renewed here whenever that is. What is it, March, I think. I'm a DevOps engineer at BDO Digital, where we're based out of Chicago, Illinois, or the Chicagoland area. I do a lot of blogging for PowerShell at my blog, The Lazy Administrator. And I've given talks at PowerShell Summit, and I've given my first talk was actually Research Triangle PowerShell Users Group. So this is my second one. So thanks, Mike, for that one, because he approached me for that, the first one, which I was super nervous for. Co-organizer of the Chicago PowerShell Users Group. We're just trying to get that one off the ground. We kind of took a little hiatus there during COVID. And I'm a co-organizer of the Chicago PowerShell Conference. It's another PowerShell Saturday we had. Unfortunately, that one, COVID hit in 2020, so that one turned into a virtual event. So let's get started with what is Wordle, if anyone's not familiar with it. So I came across it in a New York Times article. It's just a puzzle word game where you have 6 tries to guess a 5-letter word through standard deduction. It's created by this developer named Josh Wardle. So it's a play on his last name. And he was a software engineer for Reddit. And during that time, he did 2 collaborative social experiments. If anyone's familiar with it, the first one is the button. I believe that one was April Fool's one, where they just had a button there and your options were to press it or not, and they had a lot of different statistics based on that. And then Our Place, which, if I'm remembering correctly, that one was, there was a certain time limit you had to wait, but you could place one colored pixel in a giant, kind of like a giant canvas, and it was really cool because people made a bunch of things and teamed up. So how to play? Like I said, the mystery word is 5 letters long that you're trying to guess. You've got 6 tries to guess the word. I have an example here on the right side is what you would see if you went and played the actual puzzle game. There's a new word each day, and letters in green for your. So when you take a guess, your letters will change color. If you see that it's in green, that means that the word or the letter is in the word and you've correctly placed it in the correct spot. Letters in gray are not in the word at all, and letters in yellow are in the word, but you have placed them in the incorrect spot. Some items to consider when I was creating this PS Wordle. The guess must equal 5 characters only. Any guess that contains 6 characters or 5 characters or more, or more than 5 characters or less, it has to be excluded. The guess has to be a valid word, so we don't want people just guessing, all the vowels to see what's in there. So we have to kind of look at their guess and see that it's a valid word. All the possible words that are in our word list have to be in the dictionary. Otherwise, you'll get yourself in a situation where if the word's not in the dictionary, you'll never be able to guess that word. We also have to consider duplicate letters. We may not want to mark all the letters. So if the word has only 1 L and your guess has 2 L's, we don't want to mark both L's. We only want to mark the correct one. And green will always win over yellow. So one of the hardest things I had to look through is downstream greens. So if you had, like I said, an L in the first position, and you had a correctly guessed L in the farthest right position, when we're coming to that first L, we have to realize that there's, the guess contains right now 2 L's, and 1 downstream is green. So that first one, even though it's in the word, it has to be gray because the word doesn't contain 2 L's. And any guess that doesn't meet the length requirements or a valid word should not be counted as a valid guess. Like I said, you have 6 guesses to try the word. And then it also has a hard mode, and this is actually on the actual website. So hard mode will be all correctly guessed characters, green or yellow, have to be in your next and following guesses. All characters that were correctly guessed, so all green characters, have to be in your following guess in the correct spot. You can't move it around. So you have to guess a word that correctly places the green letters where they should be. So with that, let's get started. And I will bring over my actual code here. So on my left-hand side here, we might not be able to get to all of it, but I wanted to kind of piece everything apart. I created this PowerShell variant of Wordle where you can play in your actual PowerShell console. The only difference is instead of waiting at midnight every night, you can play it as many times as you want. And on top of that, I made a couple different changes, not with hard mode or anything, but I added a kind of an online feature so you can play online. You create a username, and really that just uses Azure Functions, which if I have time, I'll show it. And you can see where your place is with everyone else. So the first item here, and I'm in these examples, I'm breaking apart the entire module piece by piece and going through them, and then at the end I'll show you the full thing. So the first one is I created a function to get the dictionary. We're using select string and a regular expression here, so it's going to read an entire dictionary file, which has all my words here. So if I kind of go through all of them, I have 13,112 words in my dictionary file. If I close out of that, and this is just saying it's trying to figure out, if we're on like a Linux or Mac OS, or if we're on Windows, just because it's going to be at PS script root in a couple different in a couple different directories here, and it's going to output my entire dictionary, which I'm actually ingesting within the module. And the next one is I want to be able to get the word that the user is going to guess. So I created another function here, new-ps Wordle word. Again, in the beginning, I'm trying to figure out what platform I'm running on. And then here, and then I'm doing a select string. And the reason it's doing a select string with a regular expression, actually, I should be able to show you here if I press play and then see what words are. Part of Wordle is there we go. Yeah, it'll show you, it'll tell you what word that was because it's randomly guessing. So when we're doing select string with a regular expression, it's not only bringing in the word, but I can actually figure out what line it was at. So when you win or lose, it'll let you know that this was Wordle, let's say 12,996. So that's the reasoning for doing select string with a regular expression. If you didn't want to do that, show the user, what line it came from, you could just put in and ingest it from the file.
So Brad, let me ask you. So
yeah.
you're in the weeds here with a lot of the cool stuff that you're doing. But when you saw this puzzle online and you sort of got this idea, how much did you think you would have to do to build this in your head? Like, did you think you had a pretty clear understanding, or was like this was just like a puzzle that you wanted to kind of figure out and pick apart? And when you wanted to go through it, all these permutations came out that you had to kind of figure out.
Yeah, it's the latter. When I first started it, when I played it, I was like, man, I could create this pretty easily within PowerShell, and I did at first where, I created the basic, the bare bones of it. So I had a bunch of the dictionary file, the word file, but some of those things kind of came out of the woodwork or the weeds during it. I know I used I was pinging with Lee Holmes on a lot of this stuff. Some of this code I stole from him, and we kind of had the same situation, especially with downstream greens, as well as the first obvious error that we kind of came across was if you first we're looking, we're going through character by character and saying, is this character in the word? No, it's got to be gray. The first issue we came across was we both came across this was if the letter is in the word, we didn't kind of account for double letters. So if a word had, like I said, an L or two L's or one L, but our guess had two L's, immediately it would mark it as yellow, even though the word itself didn't have it. So, that was a speed bump that I got over by first figuring out how many L's were, or each character was in the actual word. And then I found out that I had another error. It didn't come up a lot, but like I said, I had to take into consideration downstream greens. And as I'm rotating through the word, I haven't gotten to those greens yet, so I don't know if those. So I have to first do that and then consider that later on in the loop. That's a good question.
So when you're playing this puzzle for the first time, right? So the reason I'm asking this question is, prior to us starting this, um, prior to starting this presentation, we were working on a puzzle,
Hmm.
and a lot of these puzzles, it's an excellent way for people to learn and figure out problems. That's part of the challenge of doing the puzzle. So when you get started, you have like a basic framework and you start sort of throwing ideas against the wall and you kind of figure out, all right, I think I could do it this way. I think I could do it that way. If I do this, I'm going to get that result. And you just start building pieces on top of each other. Is that sort of the method that you worked? Or did you kind of have like a plan laid out in your head to start? I know what I got to do.
No, that was the first option. That's exactly how I started it off. Bare bones. I knew I first worked with the words, and I was like, okay, let me figure out how to get the greens figured out. And once I got that, then I was like, all right, let me figure out how to do the yellows, so on and so forth. So piece by piece, little by little, that's how it was kind of created.
So sort of stick to the things that you know, figure those out, and then deal with the one-offs that come up and say, oh, how am I going to solve this problem? And slowly but surely it builds itself out into a complete solution. I'm sure when you started you didn't think you were going to have 18 or 19 scripts in this module, um, but the point I'm trying to make here is that he didn't let the complexity of the puzzle stop him from taking a shot and see what he could do. And I'm sure it was a pretty fun challenge to work through, right? Maybe on day one, line one, it wasn't what you thought it was going to end up like with by the time you finished, but I'm sure
Hmm.
it was probably a satisfying journey.
Yeah, I got the original bare bones done in a couple hours. I was really happy with it, and then as I was testing more on day two, I realized the other missing pieces that I didn't really consider. And so, you know, it was frustrating to try to figure some of those things out, but at the end it was worth it.
So would you say, I know that Lee helped you with this, but were these things that you were able to figure out on your own, or was this a lot of Google foo to find solutions to problems that you hadn't come across yet?
A lot of Google foo.
Yeah.
Um, me and Lee kind of had the same exact code. His was just I thought his was formatted a lot better. Mine I had it more stretched across, I guess you would say. So I completely rewrote it using a lot of the different types of things that he was using. So that was also fun. But yeah, it was a lot of googling, a lot of reading different how people do the different loops and figure stuff out from there, as well as stuff that wasn't even PowerShell based. I had to try to figure out how other developers work around things.
Very interesting.
All right, this next one, like Mike said, I didn't get this one done till the last day. And it's something that Lee went in a different approach, just because it was quick. But this one, it with Lee's approach, there still could be those one-off situations. And since I was publishing mine on the as a PowerShell module in the gallery, I wanted to try my best to figure it out. So this was really frustrating. It took me a long time to kind of figure it out, um, mostly because I was trying to change different strings, but in different areas and look at different indexes. Um, so this was my hardest one to figure out. So I created here a new function, and I wanted to figure out if there's correctly guessed letters downstream, um, in the guessed word compared to the actual um, word that, or if there's downstream green. So if we correctly guessed them downstream, because I want to use that later. So with this one, I created um, a changed characters array, a regular, int32 counter or an integer counter, and then my new string that I was making there at the end. So this accepts, I give it a guess and a word, the word that I'm get or the correct word in the backend during the actual module, and then the user's guess, and it's iterating through it to figure out which letters are correctly guessed in the correct positions, as well as what index value that so where exactly they're at. So I have a couple examples here, and I'm just trying to comment through my code because it was taking me a long time to kind of figure out and wrap my head around here. Um, but with my guess of daddy and the word of kiddo, I see that the user has three D's in their guess, and the word has two D's. So usually the first D you'd come across would be yellow because it thinks that you haven't guessed any D's, as we're kind of going in this roundabout way. Um, but I need to see, this allows me to see downstream that I have two D's correctly guessed. So this first D should be yellow. And all this output does just it changes the incorrect ones to stars or asterisks, and it gives me any correct letter. And I use it later within the actual module to figure out, which ones were correctly guessed. Another example here, the guess is stars, so I have two S's here, and the word is ousts. So I see that there's one correct S at the end. This first one, even since there are two S's, we know that those are both those S's are valid. One's yellow, one's green. And the last one here, the guess again is daddy, and the word is abode. So we know that the A should be correct, and that the D, even though there's three D's, there's only one D that should be green. So these two D's should be yellow. So I know that's a lot to kind of take in there, but all I'm doing essentially is figuring out which letters are correctly guessed, and then changing the string and giving myself a new string to work with later downstream. All right, now the bulk of it here is actual new PS Wordle game. This is my example. So this is the actual function where I'm creating a new game here. Here in my beginning, I'm using that function that I created earlier to get my word. I'm getting my dictionary and storing that in another variable. I'm keeping track of how many guesses the user has done. This variable here is actually keeping the emojis. If you ever played Wordle, it'll instead, because everyone uses the same word, it shows you how you did with emoji squares. So you might see, gray square, yellow square, green square, so on and so forth, in place of the letters. And then I'm also keeping track of letters that were not actually in the word. In my process loop here, the first thing I'm doing is saying if there's letters.count. Oh, you know what? I think I didn't expand that. There we go. If there's any objects within this that are not in the word, so I've already gone through this loop here once to show the user what letters are not in the word. So it makes it easier. They don't guess, any letters again. And I'm sorting that so it's all alphabetical as well. And then I'm prompting the user for a guess, and I'm telling them to guess a 5-letter word. And then here I'm just saying if they guess the word immediately that they win, so we don't have to, we're done here. We're doing a break statement. Here again, the green means that they've guessed the word, and that's timesing it by 5. So the share emoji would be just 5 green squares. And then this is actually continuing on if they're not on PowerShell core, because I don't believe it could display emojis. And then next off, it's trying to look to see if their guess.length isn't equal to 5. So if it's too short or if it's too long, we need to tell the user that they need to go back. So we're saying that your guess must be 5 letters. This continue statement is having them go all the way back up here. So they're going to just run through it all the way again continuously. We haven't gone through the counter yet, so it's not going to count that guess until you get on later down. And then here it's going to guess to see if the word or if the guess is a valid word in the dictionary. If it's not, it's going to break through this with the continue, and it's not going to count the guess. And we're just going to process this loop again and go all the way back down. Finally, if you've correctly guessed a word that's at least 5 characters, or is 5 characters, it is a valid word, and you haven't won, we're going to process it in a loop. So we're going to do this 5 times. This I was not familiar with. This is what Lee had done, so it was a really great learning experience here, and that's why I commented here. So we're doing 4. We're first initializing our variable here, and then a condition, and then a repeat. So we first have the variable POS for position. It's just a integer, and then we're saying if the position is less than 5, continue on down this loop, and each time you finish, increment that integer by 1. So it's just going to kind of keep going and keep going. Whew. Next off, we have appearances. So I want to see how many times. I can't be sure, but I think my brain is in a blender. That's how I felt too during all this. The next item I wanted to figure out is for each character. So right now we're going to go through each character
Brad?
to figure out. Yeah.
Can we take a step and my brain's kind of in a blender too. Can you just play the game once? Can I see the game in action?
Yes.
Can we,
let me. Oops. Let me just load all these in memory here. Oh, shoot. Did I save something? I'll leave that open.
Because I've never played it before, and I understand, but I think I understand.
Looks like your number 1 file has a change in it.
Oh, I'm scared. I don't know what the change is. I don't want to. I don't want to do anything. I'll do it later. Okay, so I loaded it all in memory. In the function, it's all contained within one script, so it automatically knows. So let's see. New PS Wordle game. Okay, let me blow this up a little bit. So the first time it's saying guess a 5-letter word. If I first give it
audio.
Oh, you're saying audio. I don't know why my VS Code does this. It's super annoying. Let me. I think it's every time I change that. Okay. So we see that the A, it shows you your guess here. It shows that the A is in the word and not in the correct position. All these are not in the word, so they're gray. And green means that it's in the word and it's in the correct position. Now we're in our second loop, so it saw that we have characters that are in our variable or our array of not letters. It's going to display those, like I said, in alphabetical order. And then if I give a guess that's not 5 letters, we could see that right here, I'm still on guess 2. I'm still on guess 2 because I haven't entered that loop. And it notices that my guess is not 5 letters, so it's going to prompt me for another guess. And then if I gave it a 5-letter word, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's going to say it's not in our dictionary. And it's pretty quick how I forget how many were in there. There's over 10,000 words. But it checks to see if that word is actually a valid word, and it doesn't, so we could continue on here.
Panic? Somebody said panic.
Oh, that's a very good one. So we now know that the A is in the correct position, the I is, and that there's an N in the word.
Oh.
I hate that Anyone have any suggestions? I don't want to guess on.
Satin.
Satin? Yeah. So we're just missing 1 letter. I don't even know.
Wait, they're all green? Those are all green in one?
They're green. The T is gray.
Yeah.
It's a little hard to see on Teams. And in guess number 2, the N is a yellow.
Let's see. Someone said salmon. Like that? No, it's not a word. At least not in my dictionary.
S-A-I-N.
Nope, not sarin. Sayin. No.
It's not the word.
No one else?
We're all addicted to this now. Sorry, this is now I'm kind of understanding what's happening and then why you're going. And I appreciate the time here.
Someone said Salin. Brian, we did satin, and it didn't like that one. Salin? Nope, doesn't like Salin. Oh, we're on our last guess. I don't think savin is a word. Savin? No. Sarin. We did sarin. We did satin. Come on, Phil. You don't have any more guesses here?
Yeah, no other than Savin, like you did, VIN. No?
No, it was Sabin.
What is
that? Was what I was going to say.
Sabin. Oh, Sabin.
So now, what is this? What is this graphic
This response here.
represent here? Yeah.
So with the actual Wordle game, everyone is guessing the same exact word, because you can only do one word per day, and everyone's guessing that same word. So it'll show, instead of showing people their actual guesses, because I'll ruin the game for everyone else, it changes the letters to the corresponding emoji. So you'll see these all over Twitter. People will just copy this and paste it. And so it sees on my first guess, which I go back, I had the first character yellow and the second to last one green. So it did the first character yellow and the second to last one green. And the blacks mean that it's not in the word, just because the gray emoji is like a different size for some reason. So I had to change it to the actual black square.
So it's essentially a graphical history.
Yeah, it's how you guessed. And then right here, we see PS Wordle, and that's the line it came off. So we know that in our line for words.text, that was a 7,821st letter, and it's an X over 6 because you lost. You were unable to guess it.
Where's the remedial words?
What'd you say?
Where's the remedial words? For the PowerShell folks, like dog and cat. No, I'm kidding.
I actually, I'm pretty sure I was looking at the source for Wordle, and I believe I found where they were looking at their words, so I just copied all of those. So, and this one, since you're allowed to play it as many times as you want, you can repeat the word, but the odds are stacked against you.
If you need another dictionary, Doug Fink has a module called Name It that is nothing but word lists, and I just submitted a. What was that?
It has to be 5 characters long, and that's it.
I know, but he's got a dictionary that's like 15,000 words, so you could filter on that and filter out the words that are too short and too long. I'm just saying if he needs a bigger dictionary.
Yeah, that would work, and I am already filtering on words that are 5 characters. So the dictionary can contain 10,000 words in different lengths. I'm only looking at the ones that are 5 characters, so that would work. What was I?
Webster.
So that's an interesting loop you have there. It's pretty informative for the user that's playing the game. Thought that was really well done.
Yeah. This loop. Yeah, and I try to comment my code. So, like I said, I started off really easy. It was really easy for me to follow, and then as I kept going on, I wasn't commenting my code, and I was really confused on why I was doing certain things. So I had to go back and figure out what I was doing half the time.
Made sense at the time, not later in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want me to finish up and just go through this, the actual loop here? Do we have time?
Sure, we have plenty of time.
Oh, perfect. Okay, where was I here? Yeah, so we saw the actual share emoji here. So here I'm actually iterating through my actual guess. And remember, we're going in a loop. We split up the actual guess to each character, so we're iterating through your guess left to right. So right here, we're saying if you've correctly guessed the word, or if the letter is correctly placed, we know that the foreground, we need a right host, which is how we're writing the actual guest. Here's our guest, and using the position here, the index, we're saying guess index, and if you did the first one, your index would be 0. Or actually, we would have, I think mine would be 1, but we're doing different things. No new line because we're still going through our loop. And then it's also storing your share image like we saw earlier here. Oh, is it gone? I think I went right over it. And we're saving that for later because we're building that share image kind of as we're going along. So if we haven't guessed the correct position, the next item is we're going to see if the letter is in the word at all. So we have an else if statement. We're getting our actual character here using, again, that index within our guess. So we're just taking that letter. And we're going to see if it's in our actual word. And if it is, this is where I had to use that other get matches downstream, which I stored in this variable called matches. And this one I said if the letter appears once, but it's contained within the matches string, that means that the letter is downstream and it's correctly guessed. Since we have another instance of the letter, it's got to be incorrect. So we're going to mark it dark gray because it cannot be in that word. Our share image is going to be that, I don't know why those comments are coming up like that, the black square emoji. And then within this statement as well, we're now going to count. So if that's not true, we're going to count how many times we have, God, we're going to count how many times here we've seen the letter. So get the letters from the guessed word up until the current letter. So that's where we have 0 to our current position. And we're going to see how many times the current character appears. Yep. And then we're going to get the times the current letter appears in the actual word, which is over here. And we're going to compare the two. So if we know that we're less than, that means that the letter is in the actual word. If we're equal, we still could be in the correct word because we're already past the green. But if we're more, then we know that that character is no longer in the word. We've already done the current allotment of that character. That's kind of where it got really confusing. Like I was talking earlier, I started with saying, hey, is it in the word? And then I would just mark it yellow. And as I kept going on, I was like, okay, well, now for double letters, it's going to be incorrect or it could be correct. We don't know. So then I created this first statement here to say, hey, let's count them up. Let's see how many times are we greater than that. But then I had to account for, like I said, downstream greens. So that's how I ended up lastly creating the get matches. So that's how the hardest part was figuring out the yellows. Just because, like I said, the double letters as well as downstream greens. And then anything else, so if we're not in the letter and you haven't correctly guessed it, we know that that character is not in the word, and it should be dark gray as well. So we could see some of those here. So the R was not in the word at all, so it would have fallen in this else loop. Oof. All right. And then this one, because we're in if else loop in here within the actual the yellow section, which is all of this code. Now we're outside of it and we're going to contain anything else. So again, if it's not yellow, if it's not green, it's going to be dark gray. And then each time I'm doing this, I'm adding that character within my array here of not letters. So we can present it to the user right here, not in the word, and I can categorize those or sort those alphabetically. And then right here at the end, I'm going to increment because we've gone through, we've seen if the letter is in the word, we've seen if it's yellow, we've seen if it's not. I've gone through 4 times, so I'm outside this loop, or 5 times, so I've guessed every character. Now we need to present the user to guess another word. And then here is our last statement. If our guesses equal 7, so we're unable to guess a word. Here I'm changing the guess count to equal X instead of a number because I don't want it to show the user that they've guessed correctly 7 out of, let's say, 6, because you only have 6 tries. It'll display too many guesses that we saw right here. And then I'm going to break. So I'm going to straight go to the end here of the function, and I'm going to say, PS Wordle, get that line number from our select statement earlier, show our guess count out of 6, and then share the emojis, so instead of the letters. So that's the whole core of it, and that's even without hard mode. So am I allowed to take questions? Is there any questions or anything I should stop here? Because it's a lot.
Well, the one thing I wanted to ask you was, so, let's go back to the beginning for a second, right? So
okay.
This is essentially a logic problem, right? So you get this idea and you want to kind of tackle the problem. So what's sort of your method for working through this? Do you jump right to the console, or is this like, let me start with like a diagram of logic and see where I got to go with this? Like, how do you build your foundation to get started? Because what I'm trying to frame here is with some chat going on here where people like, I'd love to be able to build a game like this. And I think at first blush, it seems very overwhelming, right? It seems like a big problem to solve because we're seeing the entire solution. But when you played the game, you didn't start there. You go like, I think I could do this, and then you just start, carving it out on paper and thinking like, okay, I'm going to need to do this, I'm going to need to do that. Or do you feel more comfortable just like, let me just start writing code and see what happens?
So with this one, because I felt that, like I said, I didn't even think about double letters or anything. I just knew, hey, it's got to be just iterate through each character and say, am I, character, am I in the word, and iterate through that way. I didn't actually, do any kind of brainstorming or anything. I just started coding. But, it wasn't even a function at that point because I thought, I didn't think it was as complex as it was. If I was in the situation where I was not presenting and I was watching someone else, I would be very intimidated. Even though I wrote this, looking at all this and be like, oh my God, I don't even know where to begin. So like I said, I started with saying, hey, I just need to do, read host and get whatever I didn't have a dictionary or anything. Essentially you could give it whatever word you want. It was going to iterate through it regardless. So I just said, I know I need to do a read host to get that. And then I'm just going to do a for each on that one until I'm done with the guess and say, hey, is it, it's just simple three, if, else if, and else. Is it, is that letter correctly guessed? No. Okay. Is it in the word? Okay. Then mark it yellow. And if it's not, anything else, it's gray. And that's really how I started. It was just that simple. And I was really happy with that. But so it was it was a building process.
And I think that's kind of the takeaway here. Like for myself, I work much in the same sort of mannerism, which is like I'll do a lot of AD stuff, and it starts out as a one-liner, and then somehow one-liner turns into 5 lines, and then at some point you're like, okay, I got the solution, but this is unreadable. Let me clean this up. And then at some point I'm like, all right, I'm very happy with what I wanted to accomplish with this. Let me turn this into some blessed code, whether it's a function or a flat script, and then it's repeatable. But when I go back and I look at the finished product, I'm like, that is not where I thought I was going to end up. It started with like a get AD user, right? And oh crap,
right.
Now I got to go to another domain, and I got to authenticate, okay, and then I need these 3 fields, and then okay, and then so the point I'm trying to make is for the people that are watching this home is, you're seeing a finished solution of 19 scripts. It started as an idea that he just sort of built around and said, okay, I figured that out. Let me do the next piece. Let me figure this piece out. And it just grew, and the solution became bigger as it went. If he sat down and said, I think I'm going to come up with a game that's going to consist of 25 scripts and all this crazy stuff, he probably would have said, I'm not doing that. That's crazy. But, on day one, it probably seemed like, I probably could put in like 3-4 hours and have something working. And then it just becomes sort of this thing that builds. And so that's kind of the key here, right? So Bradley's a smart guy and he's very good with code. He's an MVP. But the idea is, he's found something that challenged him and he just kind of picked at it. And when he got into trouble, he reached out to friends in the community, Google, tried to find the answer. He had to learn a few things. And the end result is he was able to build something that is, very, very finished product when you see it now. It's a module that runs, but his initial start at that was really just let me kick around on the command line and see what happens. And I think I got an idea how I could do this. And that's really what we want people at home to sort of understand, that these big problems can really be broken down into a lot of smaller pieces. And there's a lot of people that are capable to do these things. And you see sort of how he worked through permutations and solved pieces. There's some people that were asking questions like, where do you go from here? I remember you said that there's a part that runs in the cloud. I didn't catch what that was for. And someone asked about a leaderboard and history.
Yeah. We probably won't get to that today, but, like Mike said, I started with just a basic script, no dictionary. I think the word file was, a couple hundred words I found. I looked a lot on GitHub, so I was looking up, Wordle and trying to find PowerShell. I was all on Twitter, and I saw a couple other people take a stab at it too, because I was really confused in a lot of different areas. Um, and I was just reading all theirs and trying to figure out how they attempted to do different things. Like I said, with Lee, he did it in a totally different way, in a totally different manner than I did. Um, where was it? The while loop. I didn't even know what that was when I looked at this, and the while loop, and then this for. I looked at this and I had no idea what it was, and I had to Google a for loop in PowerShell, and like I just read the documentation, figured out what it's looking for, and that's why I put these helpful comments here, because I'm not familiar with it. And yes, as I progressed, and everything wasn't built out. Like if I look at the actual what this would look like here with different functions, these functions weren't built out. It was one giant script, but I've got myself in trouble plenty of times where I start off with a real basic script, and then let's say people are at work, or let's say people on Twitter say we should add these features, and I just keep adding it to the script. I've gotten myself in trouble there where I'm like, I try to go back into it after a month or so, and I'm like, I don't even understand what I was doing here. So I stopped myself halfway through this project because I thought it was originally going to be super basic, and I wanted to add all these features, and I broke it up into several different functions just so I can, if something breaks or something, I kind of have this area of code where I'm like, okay, it's doing this, and I don't need to do like any kind of commented based regions or anything. Sorry to went off on a tangent there, but to answer your question, Mike, the last feature I added was I thought it would be fun to have a leaderboard, and so there is a piece here that runs in the cloud. The final piece, I think is this final word over here. Let me see. I don't even know. There's different. Well, let me see. Can I? Yeah. Set config item and everything. We probably won't get to it. Maybe it's another talk. But I added a feature where it reaches out after you play it. It accepts a parameter, which is a switch parameter here. So if I go to new PS, not word, not user, leaderboard, score, I'm almost there. Okay. So I added a new parameter to this function called new PS Wordle game and said compete online. And all that's doing is down here, I have a hash table, which Mike was looking at that earlier today, of the points. So if you guessed it in one try, and remember hash tables are key value pairs. So if you guessed it in one try, I know you need 10 points. And when you have the dash, compete online, it'll know how many points you get or how many points you should have based on your guess. And the part that runs online is I have a Azure function, so it's all serverless here. And this is actually what all the code behind it. It's waiting for input, which the actual function will do. Every time you win a game, it reaches out and says, hey, this is the username and this is how many points they should have. And it stores it all just in an Azure storage table. And then I made a different function, which I'll show here. Can I expand this a little bit? There we go. Get-PS Wordle board leaderboard. Get-PS Wordle leaderboard. Let's see how quick it'll run, because I do have it kind of sleeping on me. And it'll read everyone that's currently in that storage table, and it'll sort it so we can see that all these people have played and where they are. I don't know who this Commie Cat is, but they play like every single day, and I just watch their score go up. But they seem to love it. I don't know. And then there's a couple little gotchas there. You can have negative point, or you can't have negative points, but if you can't guess the word within your 6 tries, you do lose 1 point. So I've played a lot because I was testing it, and I'm not really good at it, so I was losing a lot of points. But you cannot go underneath 0. You can't have a negative one. But yeah, so if people wanted to play with other people, I thought it would be cool just to have an added function or added feature essentially to make it so you can have a username and you can see where you're at.
So I just want to touch upon one thing that you said earlier, because remember, you're doing a presentation for a user group right now, but there's going to be a fair percentage of people that see this on YouTube that have no sort of context of what the Raleigh PowerShell user group is, or maybe even PowerShell, as a whole. So for those who are not aware, Brad is an MVP, recognized by the community as a leader and someone who helps in the community. But Brad had some issues, and he reached out to the community. And I don't know if you had picked up on this earlier, but he was saying that he was working with Lee. Lee Holmes is the lead security researcher for Microsoft's PowerShell team. So this is one of the reasons why we encourage people to participate. The PowerShell community is a very welcoming community. We want to see people be successful. And when people reach out and they ask for help, it's generally the goal of the community to help people find those answers. So in this case, Brad was stuck, and Lee is a brilliant mind at Microsoft. Lee saw that Brad needed a little help, and they started to correspond together. I'm not sure that Brad and Lee have a relationship outside of this puzzle, but Lee is the kind of guy that when he sees something, when Lee sees something he's interested in, he wants to be a part of it. So, and this is why we kind of preach this like sharing mentality in the community, because we all can learn from each other. So, Brad probably got to a point where he couldn't get past a particular problem, and he needed some resources to help him with that. And community was able to help him move him forward. And if you're watching this at home, we would love for you to be a part of our user group that meets twice a month on the first and third Wednesday. And if not with us, join the PowerShell community on Twitter or on Discord, and see that there's a lot of people there that want to help you get ahead and figure out how to do problems like this and come to solutions. That's this group right now is about 45 people that are watching this presentation tonight, and we're all basically here for the same thing. We're not really here to see every detail that Brad did in this puzzle. We're really kind of here to see, like, how did he put it together? How did he make all the bits come together to make it work? So, and that's kind of what the community is about. It's really something that, if you're not familiar with the PowerShell community, it's one of the best parts of this language. There really is no animosity amongst people in the community. Generally want to see people get ahead, and it's great to see someone like Brad be able to build something like this and put it out there in the community.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I wish me and Lee had a relationship outside this puzzle. He's so incredibly smart. It took me, like I said, I got some tweets on Twitter, and Lee put up his code on GitHub, and you see this code in front of you now, the final version here. It took me, a couple hours to pour through Lee's code, and I was taking notes, commenting stuff out and saying, this is what this is doing, this is what this is doing, because I just frankly didn't understand it. There's been things have been added to PowerShell I just wasn't familiar with. I had no idea how to do a lot of it, and it took me, like I said, hours to pour over, different people's code to see what they're doing. Went through it, read the PowerShell help, read the documentation that's on Microsoft website, just to kind of understand what it was doing. But yeah, Twitter is I think one of the best places. Everyone's always reaching out and sharing stuff, and everyone's pretty polite. I quite enjoy that. No one tears apart my code. Too bad.
Well, it takes a little bit of a thick skin to share your code with others, but generally speaking, I think everybody wants to learn from each other. I share a lot of my code, and I would be the first to admit it's not the prettiest code in the world, but it gets the job done.
Yep. Yeah.
So potential feedback at this point is, what font are you using for your emojis? Because I ran mine and I get the emojis don't show up. Oh,
I looked into this when I was looking into this part. What is this one where you can have Mike, you have it on your console too, I saw.
It's weird. It's like I just pasted it into Teams, and it put it in, it found it right. So that's my I guess the word, whatever. But in my PowerShell console, it shows just as question marks. It doesn't know what the content.
This is Cascadia, I think.
Oh wait, that's Hack Nerd Font is the editor.
Yeah, the regular console won't find them, so I'm using regular PowerShell 7.
Oh,
So interesting.
mine's default. PowerShell integrated console. I believe my default's PowerShell 7. I don't know, Phil. Do you know how to? I figure it out. I have no idea.
What was? Oh, sorry,
How
I
I
was.
figure out.
But you're not running it in
Terminal
VS Code, right,
prompt?
Phil? You're running it inside of a.
I was running it in PowerShell 7, just straight up console.
Oh, like in here.
Yeah.
Oh,
No.
not in here.
Yeah, in there. But I'm on the Windows box too. But yeah,
Oh,
it came back with my little puzzle, and it came back. I got words.
Oh, that is weird. I don't know. Maybe it's a bug. I'm gonna have to now figure it out.
We'll reach out together. We'll look into it. See if it's just something with my thing.
I'm sorry about that.
PowerShell version 1.4.7, 7.4.1. So yeah, we'll go from there. It'll be fun.
Josh said, use Windows Terminal. I think that.
I have Terminal too. I just put it in there and see if it works. It probably will.
Okay. Can I answer this question from Aaron? Did I see?
Sure.
How do you feel this project helped your coding and problem solving versus, say, your day-to-day DevOps work? How did it help my coding? Well, really, so like I said, how it helped my coding is I learned all these different, these different items, especially looking at Lee's code and reading other people's code on how to do things. This for loop, do while, or I think I knew how to do while. No, do this while true. I didn't know how to do, and a lot of like his formatting is a lot easier to read in my opinion, which I'm able to, if my goal always in my day-to-day job is to have the most readable code, not only for myself but for other people, but especially for myself, because this probably happens to other people. You work on a script, you work on a function, a module, you come back in a month and you have no idea why you did things. So this really helped me understand different ways to accomplish things. I to be honest never knew that I could just do a what is semicolon there and continue on with the same line. I'll admit that here as on recording. But another thing that, like I said earlier, with the get matched items, it took me like a day to wrap my head around what I was trying to do. That's the one, to answer your question, Mike. I actually had to write down to figure out what exactly I needed to accomplish, and how I could do it. And again, that was figuring out my downstream greens, because in PowerShell here, I'm not there yet. I'm iterating through your guess, but I have no idea what's down the line. So that was something that it helped me. I felt that at that portion, I really felt like an actual programmer here, trying to figure out how someone could account for something like that. And I felt a little defeated because I was looking at other people's Wordle clones that were in different languages, just trying to help myself understand, because I don't know how to write those languages, but I could read it, and it seemed like everyone else had a really easy time with it. So felt a little defeated, but in the end I got it, and so that really helped me. But for my day-to-day job, readable code, as well as splitting this up into different functions, just making it so someone else could come by and figure out what the heck I was doing if I got hit by a bus.
Just to touch upon what Aaron was asking there. So Aaron, there's a guy that attends our group. His name's Stephen Judd, who's done a presentation probably about 6 months ago. And Stephen made a comment that when he writes code, like Brad is doing here on the screen, he tries to be as verbose as possible, because the assumption is that either he or someone else is going to read his code. When he's working at the Windows terminal or the command line, he's trying to be as fast and as efficient as possible. So there's sort of a marrying of two worlds there, right? When you're at the command line, you're using aliases and you're trying to use all these shortcuts to work fast. But then when you come back and you write this code and you want to make it pretty for people to understand, you start to learn how the language is supposed to be written. And when you work and you see other people like Lee Holmes, who's one of the guys who's working on the language, and you see some of the advanced ways that the language can be used, a lot of those things don't show up in documentation. The only way to kind of come across it, like aliases, for example, is to stumble across those and see how people use them. Like Brad was mentioning, like the semicolon to continue a line and the while loops. This problem that he's solving here of logic is basically a lot of string manipulation. And you're never going to be working in a lot of this code and not have to do some string manipulation somewhere down the road. So a lot of this select string and this regex stuff and being able to move within the word and grab letters and save them and manipulate them makes it much easier when you have to do these challenges, especially for data output for results from your work later on. So this may not relate directly to what Brad does day to day, but there's going to come a point where he needs to produce a report for something, and he's going to have some history that he can call upon that he used probably in this program or something else that he's done where it's like, I know what I need to do because I've encountered this situation before. So that's what these logic puzzles are great about. They get you to exercise muscles that you're not necessarily using every day, so that when you do need them, it's not such a odd situation to be in.
Yeah, I appreciate the shout out there, Mike.
Yeah, man. How is a guess rendered if the guess has two of the same letter, where one is in the correct position, but there's only one of it in the hidden word? For example, hidden word memes, guess swims. So I think Ryan, he might have talked about that earlier, where he's assuming the first guess, if it's not in a position, would be a yellow, but then if it's somewhere else in the word that is in the right position, it marks that a green.
It'll mark the first one as a green because of this function here, get matched items, which runs right after your guess. It knows that your S is correct downstream. So when it comes across that S, that first S in swims in your first guess, where the heck was I? Here we go. It'll see that it appears one time and it's in my matches. We know that downstream you've correctly guessed it, so it's going to mark that dark gray. And that's kind of the part that was really hurt my brain to figure out how to do properly, and then continue on with this else if statement to count each instance. But so it will take your guess and it'll correctly do it as a dark gray.
Do we have other questions for Brad tonight? So there are other things that people want to talk about related to his solution here.
I can share what I started to do last night for a solution, but it's definitely not running yet. It was just me kind of, brainstorming.
You tried to do another version of the Wordle game?
Yeah, knowing this was coming up, I was like, let me see, what I would do to try to solve it. I put a few minutes into writing it up and brainstorming it, but it's definitely not running yet. It would just be to kind of show what it looks like when you start a project like this.
Well, maybe we save that for after he's done so that we can have a recording that's kind of focused on Brad, and then we'll say, okay, good night, Brad, and then we can sort of kick around different ideas. How about that?
Sure.
All right. So Brad, I could turn this back over to you. I don't know how much more you want to show or where you want to go with this.
I'll end with I'll just do the hard mode because that will complete the actual mirror of what Wordle is, if that's fine with you. And
sure,
we'll wrap it up there.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you remember from the beginning of this talk, hard mode is all your correctly guessed letters must be in all your following guesses, yellow or green. Green must stay in the same exact position, so the same index number. So for this one, I added a new parameter here within my new -ps Wordle game function called hard mode. And then I believe I added, new to hard mode, I added an array for correct letters. I wanted to keep track of those. and then a hash table for correct letters and their index value, so their placement. I wanted to remember where they were within the word. So here I'm saying, and it's pretty basic here. This was one of the last ones, besides like the online stuff I had to try to figure out, because it sounded hard to me. So this was another one where I had to sit there and try to think about how to do, and I kind of went in a couple different directions, and then this one finally worked. So for hard mode here, where are we? So we're in our while true loop here. So we're saying it's not in the word. You haven't guessed a 5-letter word, and then it's doing a check because we're in hard mode now. So for hard mode, if the guess doesn't contain correctly previously guessed letters, we know that something is incorrect, and we're going to do a do until loop here. So if our guess does not contain all of our correct letters, and our correct letters is greater than 0, so we know that there's actually something within that array, we know that the user's guess is invalid for hard mode, and we're going to prompt them again and continue in this loop until they get it right, essentially. And then the last part is, let's see, hard mode. I have it in a couple spots here. Here we go. So we have, now this is in our loop where we're actually guessing, we're guessing the word and we're kind of iterating through it. So we're in our loop going through all the characters here. So for hard mode here, we want to add correct letters and their placement to the hash table. So it's a key value pair. So I want to say the key is going to be the position in the index. So, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 for a 5-character word, as well as the value. So what that character is, and we're going to store that in our actual hash table. And I think that correct letters. Let me double check here. Let me read this. Where's my hash table? Lost it. Here we go. Okay, and where are we here? Okay, so I missed this. So we're still in our hard mode loop here. So this is the first one here is saying, do you have all of your correctly guessed letters? If you don't, continuously prompt the user until they do. Once we have a valid guess, we're going to go in here. We're going to make sure that our correct letter placement, that hash table, again, it's going to remember the index value as well as the actual character itself. If there's items within that hash table, we're going to enumerate through them one by one, and then until all the letters are in the right spot. Okay, so this is where last night I actually had to, when I was rereading this code, I had to put in this comment to figure out what the heck I was doing. But for this one, we're saying the guess and the index of the correct letter, if that is not equal to the letter, right? To the underscore value to the one that's actually in our hash table, then we know it's in the incorrect spot. So my comment here says while guess and then the index of the correct letter, so we know the correct one, so we're getting that index, is not equal to the correct letter, then the letter is not in the correct spot. And I know that's really hard to figure out there, but all I'm doing is saying, get all my correct letters that are in that hash table, get the index number, and look at the index number of your guesses, and make sure that they're equal to each other. So essentially making sure that all those greens are in the correct spot. And that's it for hard mode. It just wants to know that you have all your correct guesses, all your correct characters are in your next guess, and then all the greens are in the correct spot. So if I could just bring this up over here, and I could show you this. So if I do, let me clear my screen here. New PS Wordle game, hard mode. Okay, so if I guess a word here, if my following guess doesn't have an ONDA, and it doesn't matter what position because they're all yellow, it's going to get mad at me. So I don't know. God, I can't believe Phil, you got anything? Does anyone got anyone? Toads. That should work. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now if I guessed Honda again, even though I have at least my 3 correct, it knows that the T's in the correct position. So it's going to say you must use all the correct letters from the previous guess, because I don't have a T. So if I did something with a T, which I can't believe it's going so well here.
Panda?
No, that
No,
won't
it's
work.
T. It's
Oh,
T.
T
Starts
is
with
in
a
the
T.
front. Yeah. So
Tanda.
T-
Well, you know what? Maybe I could just do a different game here. Okay, so I have the H in the correct spot. If I did a word that then changes it, so I don't know.
But it had no
Sure.
A,
There we
right?
go. I must be spelling that wrong. I don't want the H in the first position. Shank. There we go. There we go. So it says letters shown in the correct spot must remain in the correct spot. So I could say, what, hangs? There we go. And if I didn't include the S, it'll tell me the same one, that you must use all the correct letters in the previous post. So I don't know.
So somebody asked in chat about if you use hard mode, does it affect your online, number of points and the number of, points there?
It doesn't. So if you do hard mode, you don't get any more points than if you just did the regular mode. So
Yeah, well,
at least not
I
yet.
did really good my first 2 games, and then I was like, oh, I'm going to do the online version, and I both -1. So I got these words are just crazy. Like I've never Droxy.
I know. Yeah, I agree. Sometimes I get a little, and you could essentially know exactly where it's at the PS group root, so you can go in and make your own words essentially if you wanted to.
Yeah. Well, yeah, words that
They're
I
too
know.
hard for you, Phil. Just have
I don't know what
3
vold
words
is.
you're continuously guessing.
Vold. What is a vold?
If you're doing the online mode, are you sharing the same word list though? Because if not, that's a way to cheat the system, if you will.
Yes, you are sharing the same word list. There are, like I said, you could go in and change it and essentially get up there. There are a couple, it's a puzzle word game, so I don't want to take too much effort to try to circumvent cheaters. Because if you wanted to cheat in Wordle, man, it's okay. But there are a couple, prereqs there that I am catching for, but you can't prevent cheaters unless I moved all the code up to hosted or something like that where nothing was local. So to answer your question in a long-winded answer.
Still to that point, much respect. Good job.
But that's it. I'm not going to go into, because the online portion gets pretty complicated there. So I'll stop it at that. But that is exactly how the Wordle game is online. So you have your hard mode, you have your dictionary checker, checking for the 5-character guess, so on and so forth. So everything from the actual Wordle one, and the only difference is, you can play as many times as you want, as your heart desires. But that's, I think that's all I have, Mike. If I could turn it back to you, or answer questions.
Well,
I don't know.
I think
you
this
just
is
solved my meeting hell problem.
What was that, Jeremy?
I said he just solved my meeting hell problem. Now in meetings, I can just sit here and do this.
I'm pretty sure that's what the person in first place does, if I ever figure it out. They play during work hours, or at least my work hours. I don't know where they're at.
Jeremy, that confession is going in the recording. I hope you know.
That's fine.
Can we see the leaderboard for a second?
Yeah, let me bring it up. There you go.
Jeremy, are you Commie Cat? Let's be honest.
No, but that's an awesome name, and I regret not being Commie Cat.
Brad, I think this is a fantastic effort that you put in here, and this is a pretty slick solution to a very common game right now that people can suck into their system and play on their machines. Just for the folks at home, why don't you talk about how they can get this code and how they can get it installed, and if they want to play, how they can find it.
Sure. So you'll want to run administrative PowerShell. If you're on, or console. So if you're on Windows, right click, run as admin. Since it's available on the PowerShell gallery, you just need to run install dash module, and then PS Wordle. And it's not, there you go. And if you see my history, there's a couple different ones, but install dash module space PS Wordle, and it'll reach out to the gallery and install the latest one.
All right, so maybe we'll wrap it up here. I want to say a big thank you to Brad for presenting tonight. The goal of this meeting tonight was really to show people in the community that, with a little bit of effort and time, you really can solve some big problems by just putting in, a start, right? Build a framework out and build it up from there. You don't have to solve the world in a day. Brad came up with an idea. He thought he could work on it. Along the way, he encountered some problems. He improved his code. He reached out to people in the community for help. And at the end of the day, he built a really fun game for people to play. And he learned a lot of cool solutions and tricks that he can use in his other code. So it's a win for Brad. He created something really useful. And it's a win for people for something they could pull down and ingest on their machines and do something really cool. So I want to say thank you to Brad Wyatt for presenting tonight, and we hope you enjoyed this. If you've made it this far into the video, please check out our channel. We have over 100 videos of other presenters, including Brad, from previous meetings. You'd be hard-pressed to find a topic on PowerShell and Azure that we haven't covered over the last 3 years. And if you'd like to join us in person, you can visit us at rtpsug.com. We get together on the first and third Wednesday of the month. We meet over Teams, and we'd love to have you join us in person, and you can ask questions and be a part of our video. So with that, we'll say goodnight, and thank you so much, Brad.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Sure. I will see you later, everyone. Take care.
Good night.